Hello, everybody. My name is Anand Joshi. I'm glad to be part of this session here today. Uh, Brief introduction. I head the Engineering Center for Whirlpool Corporation and operating out of Pune. My background is almost 25 plus years of experience prior to Whirlpool in engineering and technology research, like companies like Eaton Aerospace and GE and similar other conglomerates. Today, I'm going to talk about digital twins, primarily in the context of product design and development. So I may not be going deep into technologies per se for digital twins. I'll be more talking about traditional product engineering, what it takes to adopt digital twin principles, either in product development process or some of the digital twin practices that are available now or evolving in the domain of product development. So we are going to be covering today, as I said, a quick background about digital twins. We'll talk about what they are and just to set the context. Obviously, since we're talking about product engineering, I think we'll also look at the digital twins in development process. What are the typical shifts that are happening in the design process to accommodate the specific demands coming from digital twin ready products, and then essentially what it takes to develop the products which are enabled with digital twin, which means what are the new technologies that are embedded into the products, or how do we really go into the systems approach to enable the digital twinning in the development cycle. And when I say development cycle, it's a kind of a whole product life cycle. And then at the end of the day, for engineering talent or even the engineering leaders or technology leaders, what skills and competencies across different functions and domains required to drive the product development in this digital twin era. Now, if you really see, we have this idea to product still remains as same, but what we do and how do it's significantly changing, and more specifically because of the deployment of digital twin principles. A little bit of background, I think if you really see some of the pictures on the left, you see an aircraft engine or a complex manufacturing plant or a very remote location, multiple wind turbine wind farm, or a very critical MRI and other medical equipment, or a remote oil and gas platform, or some kind of a process industry operations, which for technical reasons may not be able to be stopped in between. Now, what's the common in this? The common thing in this is they are really assets that are extremely heavy on capex, that cannot be afforded to have a downtime or unscheduled breakdown, or they're working in a remote and hazardous conditions that cannot suddenly be attended to within a very short notice. And it needs to have more optimal usage of these expensive assets. These are also some of this mission critical kind of equipment that needs a very proactive look at the way they operate efficiently as well as flawlessly. And at the end of the day, they need to be reliable. They need to be ongoing, continuous. Now, obviously, there has been a monitoring technologies which essentially would help to find out the health of the products, but they would always basis some of the signals. They will never basis some kind of a symptoms or some intelligence that will proactively predict what may come in future about certain components or certain subsystems in these products. So that is where the whole digital twin comes into picture. Now, I gave an examples of heavy industrial products because for all the reasons of business sense as well as the technologies being developed, it started working with those kind of products, and they're getting matured into those heavy industry. However, this as a concept is coming through for multiple other products. And I'm going to touch on a topic which on a similar domain, but more specific into consumer products, because it's coming there as well. So before we go to there, I think a real quick introduction to what is digital twin. This is still an evolving area. So there are multiple definitions, there are multiple ways, there are even various use cases that are being discussed, and they're still very open as far as the scope of digital twins is concerned. But more refined definition of digital twin is what is given by Glassjan and Stargell, which talks about a multi-physics, multi-scale probabilistic simulation model of a complex product, which is a physical product and uses the best available physical models, which are designed basis of fundamental physics base or basis certain empiricals, as well as getting a sensorial data to mirror the life of the corresponding twin. Now, what it means is it's actually a digital replica of a physical thing. All of us talk about Internet of Thing, and then the thing is nothing but those products, the physical product, whether it's a wind turbine or a washer in a home or a locomotive engine. Now, it's a seamless and continuous connected between the physical and virtual model. The fidelity between the physical and virtual models is very seamless. What it means is that both are more or less representing the same kind of characteristics. It is a sensor-based data generation and data-based process monitoring and control. And we'll talk a little bit about that, how it does in a couple of examples. It not only is basis the signals that it gets, but it's also then able to identify the symptoms ahead of time. And then eventually in a more robust way, developing models which can predict, a future event and alert the owner to take some corrective action. And that's very different than what traditional conditional monitoring has been happening. I talked about a high fidelity between the physical and virtual product, and that's the beauty because this is continuous data generation. And by the way, this is not only data for a particular, the object under observation. It's a data coming from a similar objects all over the places. So it is important that there are more or less similar representation when it comes to parameters on the physical side as well as the virtual side. And then obviously the sum of these digital twins essentially can be categorized as a product twins or process twins and system level twins. We are going to be focusing more on the product because we're going to be talking a little bit about product development as such. But in principle, they more or less remain same as development and architecture of twins. Now, why digital twins? I think we touched base on some of the potential challenges it can address in terms of predicting certain events ahead of time basis the data generated and optimizing the operations and maintenance, especially for those heavy physical assets or manufacturing plants and processes. It's a transparent data-driven decisions, has a very limited or no dependence on a very individualistic views and tacit knowledge, though it certainly uses extensively the tacit knowledge to refine the models. It's not but spot decisions that individuals could take. It's a lot more robust decision process. It also prioritizes the business critical actions. It tells the system or the system owner what's the most important action to be taken and which system or which component or which product to be certainly be taken care of on priority. It optimizes operations in terms of manufacturing plants or in terms of products in a home appliance. It can tell the consumer to use it optimally or even the appliance manufacturer to design it optimally or make the changes in the products to make it more optimal basis the inputs they get. It's predictive, proactive, and more importantly, need-based. I think most of this heavy equipment needs a lot more proactive and predictive approach. And I think it's able to enable that at the most optimal cost as well as the least disruptions in the operations. At the end of the day, it has to reflect into customer satisfaction. I talked about minimal disruptions, downtime, high level of reliability and efficiency. With that, some of the examples, and I said at the start of the session, I think it is still evolving. There are many examples that are being assessed for potential benefits, and with that, a lot of technological solutions are evolving. But some of the more prominent examples is manufacturing, for example, plants being virtually built and tested for advanced manufacturing concepts without really affecting the production lines or even investing heavily into the physical stuff just to validate the concept. On the aerospace side, of course, it's a very high cost, very low volume kind of products. So virtually assessing the components for durability, functionality, reliability, and so on ahead of time before really getting the product into commercialization is something that falls into these examples. On automotive side, I think how do you really get the failures ahead of time in the design and make the improvements in the design at the design stage even before the launches for safety, efficiency, and so on. Healthcare, obviously, similar example, collecting the data from the patients or even people who are using wearables and essentially creating some kind of personalized disease prediction or personalized treatment, propositions. And then last, probably pick a smart city, monitoring and tracking the traffic levels with certain level of sensors, understand the way there is an occupancy or environmental conditions, energy consumption, and so on, to design a system for a smart city which has a opportunity to ensure that right level of safety norms, regulatory norms, environmental norms are adhered to. So these are some of the examples. I think I'll probably go a little deep into the manufacturing environment digital twin. Now, as the definition says, it essentially has a mirror image which talks about the physical stuff and a digital version of a digital image of it. So as you can see in the block diagram on the left side, you would see the manufacturing plant like any other manufacturing plant, which has its own inputs basis the manufacturing specifications, the component that is being manufactured, the specs of that, the production plan, the quality criteria, materials, and so on, all the normal things that a manufacturing plant will need as inputs to operate. Now on the right side, you see that there is a sensor, and by the way, these manufacturing plants have various sensors, whether it's for temperature, for optical sensing, proximity sensing, weather conditions, and various other parameters required to operationalize the manufacturing line as well as the product quality. And then that data continuously keeps logging and transferring it to the digital system, wherein this reference data, which is the historic data collected or other machines data, or the reference standard data in terms of the design specs, machine specs, failure logs, and so on, it continuously keeps a kind of a differential assessment between the data which is getting logged as well as the historic data and certain type of algorithms which it has developed for modeling certain ideal conditions of the subsystems of the manufacturing plant. And this whole process, this analytics insights throws out certain kind of deviations and corrective actions, which are then fed back to the physical system, which is essentially some kind of an actuation in coordination with the sensing systems, does all the right corrective actions to bring the manufacturing process back onto the track. Now, these actions could be programmatically done by the actuation systems, or in some cases, these actions could need a human intervention, which means you may have to redesign the manufacturing system, but that is essentially coming out of the knowledge generated out of this iterative and continuous data generation, data aggregation, data analytics, and feedback that comes to continue to improve these processes or remove or eliminate the faults that are coming in the system. So this is the whole principle. Now here the manufacturing plant could be replaced by an aircraft engine or could be replaced by probably an oil and gas platform. But I think principle more or less remains same. Of course, your inputs will be different. The reference data, the type of signals that you will take out of the sensing systems could be different. But in principle, this is how it would work for a manufacturing environment, or for that matter, a more complex industrial system. Coming to a more simplified example on the product side, I think I took an example of a home appliance for a couple of reasons. Many of you will be able to connect to that because most of us, all of us actually use those at home. Moreover, I have my present job more related to this industry with a lot of stuff to talk about on this. So that's the reason I picked it. Now you take a very, very intelligent appliance. This is a washer example. This is a washer dryer combo. I'm just talking about washer at the moment. The consumer puts the cloth load and she only selects a cycle. Now, being an intelligent product, this will programmatically pick the cycle time required because you probably have already cloth load changed. It has already have a correlation between what type of cycle selected and what it means in terms of wash and spin speed or temperature, or what is the required quantity of water. This is the cloth load or type of clothes, what is the detergent quantity, and so on. So it will just programmatically run this whole algorithm or cycle for this. Now this would have multiple sensors, would have sensors for water level, turbidity measurement, it would have sensors for speed of the drum, or torque, or even for that matter vibrations and noise and so on. Now it feeds that continuously the data to your data aggregation setup, and the data from, just imagine the similar data is coming from a few 100,000 similar products, in the field, and then obviously you have certain desired outcome decided for that. And by the way, you also have a virtual models designed or developed for predicting the real-time energy or hydraulics, wash performance, system reliability, noise, suspension dynamics, and so on. So that essentially with continuously incoming data continues to validate those parameters. And at some point of time, if it really comes up with certain kind of a not so acceptable outcome, it will feed the corrective action. And the corrective action goes back to either programmatical selection of some of these parameters, which is at a consumer's level, or again, similar to what we talked in manufacturing case, could be a resetting at the design level, which means that the system comes back and says that probably when you develop a new product or you want to have a next version of this product, these are the changes you want to make. So it gives a very high level of comfort to the consumer that at any given point of time, the desired outcome, whether in terms of wash quality or reliability or energy or so on, is taken care, or there is a right closed loop corrective action system which takes care of that programmatically. And for the product manufacturers, it will essentially give a feedback on what needs to be done differently at the product level. Now, with that, I'll come to the specific discussion on what's the core of the designing for life cycle. Because when we're talking about product development, we're talking about designing for the whole life cycle. We're not only talking about designing a product which just comes out of your manufacturing plant. It is designing for the whole life cycle. And life cycle, essentially, if you see on the right side, typically have 8 or 9 steps, starting from conceptualization to design to supply chain sourcing, manufacturing, sales, point of use, circle, and back to conceptualization. Now, the whole philosophy behind the digital twins here is, how do you generate, how do you capture, and how do you use this data generated at every step of this life cycle. For example, when we are talking about conceptualization, historic data on consumer insights or competitive benchmarks or technology benchmarks, or on the design side, the functional specifications or the standards for the products or the field inputs coming for a similar products in the market. On the sourcing side, supplier materials, logistics related data, existing data or historic data. Just to couple of examples, on the use side or consumer side, what are typical user behaviors? So historically, how the consumers have used the products, or how the product has operated in certain kind of user environment. On service side, what kind of historic data is in the quality or failures, and so on. So I think the whole responsibility or opportunity for design team is to really look at this data piece before even really productionizing or in fact conceptualizing the whole design cycle. And then answer the questions why this data is needed, what value it creates in to the consumer, to the society, or to the manufacturer. How do we generate the data? And we'll talk a little bit about that in next slides. And eventually, how will this data be transferred, recorded, and processed? And then at the end of the day, being the product development team, what changes are required either at a design level or at the approach level in the product or manufacturing and so on, because we're designing for the whole life cycle. And the whole fundamental change that we need to make to adopt to the whole concept of digital twins design for the whole life cycle is really mapping this need of the data and use of the data at different stages of the product life cycle. When you do that, I think it also changes the way we operationalize this development process. So here is on the left side a typical representation of a product being designed in a traditional way. You may have a certain amount of simulation just to validate some of those things virtually, but most of the things traditionally would be done like in terms of making market surveys and consumer insights by really physically doing the regular surveys and so on, or data analysis from the physical products, or making physical prototypes either for testing or consumer trials, even the reliability testing for a few weeks, few months, few years, and then eventually physical performance and functionality testing, even for qualification for doing on the physical product. From that to on the right side, I think more heavy onto the virtual side, using historic consumer data analytics, applying the analytics to the historic data, and then from virtual models gating the data, or your design processes through virtual and CAD 3D models, or using AR, VR for consumer trials and feedbacks, or having a more high fidelity reliability models to replace the reliability testing, and then eventually the system models to predict the physical performance of the products. Now, are we really going in that phase completely? Yet not. I think some are ahead, some product lines or some industries are ahead, some are still trying at a very early stage. But that's the future. Now, what does it mean in terms of a design team or a designer is a designing for product lifecycle? As I said, it gives an opportunity to look at a system approach, not only system approach, but also the whole product lifecycle approach. It's a faster and robust product launches. It is not subjective to a lot of spot decisions, but it's a more holistic, physics-based, not an experimental-based, physics-based analytics, which gives a lot more robust design decisions. It can be also be having a lot more design thinking embedded, because being virtual, you can embed your consumer at any given point of time, which is a big need of design thinking process. And then last but not least, probably more relevant in the present scenario of COVID, post-COVID scenario, it enables the distributed, virtual, and concurrent development. So I think it's the right thing for most of the industry leaders to really start adopting this, because it has its own benefits in the long run. Now, let me come back to the old chart of the appliance example that I gave. I'm going to talk in this chart as what does it mean for a engineering developer or designer or engineering expert? Because I think this is, we have developed products for years and years, but then what is changing here? I think from the skills and competencies perspective, I'm only looking from that perspective on this chart. Do you really know your consumer expectation well? I think that's the real thing on the desired outcome side of it. I mean, in this case, we talked about wash quality, energy, NVH, and believe me, whether you use a traditional way or any technology-driven, the way we are talking about is a digital twin way, you still have to have your consumer connect much. So you can apply all the best technologies, but your starting point is not perfect. It has chances of having errors in the whole development cycle. So fundamental thing is, do you really know your inputs and starting point pretty well? Then comes obviously you have a right interfaces, you really have a right understanding of what the consumer will look for. And now we are talking about mobile apps or smart connected products, or voice operated and all that thing. Are you really, I'm not saying that you should be expert in everything, but as a system level holistic smart product developer, do you have a good understanding of these aspects? Then comes the core of these things. Do you really have a complete understanding of functional algorithms? Do you know how the product works? Do you know how some of these desired outcomes by the consumers are going to be met by the product by doing certain operations? And do you have a right intelligence embedded into the product to do those operations? Then comes the whole physics-based analytics. Like, do you have enough fundamental physics-based failure understanding, and can you mimic those physics-based failures into a lot high fidelity virtual models? I'm talking about technical models here, but they can be more than that. And those models will be certainly part of your right side of this whole cycle. how are we really embedding? Because we talked about data, right? I mean, this whole thing starts and ends with data. So do you really have a good understanding of a sensing as well as the sensor data management? Of course, the actuation part of that, just to make products change its operations or the way it works. But I think more important is, do you know what kind of sensors are required to be embedded? What does it mean? How do you really want to do that? What value it creates? And that basic understanding is very critical. Last but not the least, how digital savvy you are, because eventually it has to be in a cloud, IoT, ML, and a lot more things already in pipeline. What I wanted to bring out here is, I think sometimes right now, many times it's a pursuit that if you're pretty good on this point number 6, which is digital savviness, you probably are ready for product digital transformation. The reality is the fundamentals still remain there. In fact, remaining 5 points are equally important, if not more, for you to be successful on the 6th point. And that's what I wanted to give a message on this, that as a future ready engineering talent, you may probably want to see how we're having a good savviness around all these 6 points when you're touching any product for development for future. Now, we talked about what the digital twin is, what it means in terms of the process you follow using digital twins, and then we connected with how do you develop a digital twin enabled product. I want to quickly talk about, and the previous chart I talked about some of the additional knowledge or skills that you need to look at, but I think more specifically, what you need to probably acquire a good understanding is about some of these topics that I have listed on the chart. For example, AR/VR, I think many of the manufacturing related applications, or even right now, some of the design cycle or consumer insights are certainly being done with these technologies. And if you're really able to adopt those into your engineering cycle or design cycle, I think those certainly can create huge value. And for that, you need to know what it is and try and adopt that. Of course, the whole foundational stuff of this intelligence is AI, ML, continuous learning models, continuous optimizing high fidelity models, a lot of data churning, a lot of data management. So that's something that you need to look at. Of course, the core of the functionality of the products is the physics-based models, and how do you really make those models a lot more high efficiency or high fidelity, I think remains a need of this whole success of the story. Of course, cloud and edge computing is something that is going to be enabling this whole IoT stuff. I talked about a sensing. I think it's becoming more like a need of the product. I mean, any product. And at the end of the day, generation where data is obviously incomplete without sensing. So how do you really know the types of sensors, applications, what kind of environments they can operate, and those kind of things. And then some of the other manufacturing advanced technologies. One example I take as a 3D printing, because that's probably coming out as a part of the Industry 4.0 story, which is kind of an extension of the digital twins. So I would urge you to look into some of this. Again, as I said, this is an evolving industry. Technologies are evolving. The boundaries are still evolving, for what exactly it means as a digital twin. But my intent for this session was to really talk through what does it mean for the traditional industrial product design and engineering teams who still need to continue to develop products. We call it as smart products. We call it IoT enabled products. But what it takes to develop those products and what kind of digital twin technology that we need to adopt into the PD cycle. Now, what is the value and importance of data? But then it has to be very relevant data. And how do you generate relevant data? After you generate the data, how do you use it more effectively by having right intelligence in your digital twin systems or high fidelity models? And then eventually, how do you develop digital twin enabled products flawlessly? We also touch base on what needs to be done differently in the product development cycle, or skills and capabilities, and so on. And I'm sure we are really every day trying to really do something better, and I'm sure one day we will have a very, very strong ecosystem which can enable the very, very tech savvy digital twin enabled products across industries. So with that, I would like to conclude and thank you very much.
Thanks, Anand, for sharing your time and experiences with us. To our audience, Anand is now available in the networking lounge for interaction. So do avail the chat option available at your end to interact with him. Thank you so much, Anand.
Thank you very much.